I decided not to concentrate on just one championship, because then you just kill someone, you know. Instead, we're gonna have one game from different championship games that have some effect on either me or the audience at large. So some of you who are really into chess might be disappointed because they're relatively modern, but I still think you can see this game again and again. I've seen it more than once and still stayed alive. So this is the decisive game from the match between Topalov and Anand in Sofia 2010, game 12. Anand is in a must-win situation. If he wants to retain himself, just retain his title, because right now it's 2-2. The score in the match is 2-2 with draws, and this is the game 12. So he is playing black. I don't think that he came into this game really thinking that he's going to win the game. Maybe he thought that after a draw there's going to be some sort of tie breaks, but he played, in my opinion, and I know that other strong players agree, one of the most strategically perfect games that have been played in modern times. Really perfect game. Okay, so without further ado, okay, we're going to go with this opening. The annotations, by the way, if you see any annotations and lines, are by no less than Anish Giri, who today beat MVL and qualified to the next phase of the World Cup. Very strong player. So, again, many possibilities are mentioned. Bishop f4 is mentioned. Bishop g5, okay, h6, bishop h4, castles, e3. And again, this is a famous position. Many moves are known. He decided to play knight e4, which is known as the Lasker variation. Other moves that are worth mentioning are the Tartakover with b6, which is very, very popular by lots of players, including but not limited to people like Nigel Short back when he was a world candidate. And you can play c6, knight bd7. They are a little more quiet. So knight e4, Lasker's idea. And now we understand why h6 was played. If the bishop was still on g5, then the bishop would not be obligated to trade. He could just play bishop f4, which could be a little bit annoying when the bishop still stays, because the bishop, right now this bishop is definitely better than this bishop. That's why you're trying to relieve some of the pressure. So now, of course, the bishop has to go here. It makes no sense to play bishop here when the knight can just take it. Queen takes e7. And again, modern times, he played the move rook c1. Queen c2 is another move that's popular. In the old days, the only variation that was really tried was pawn takes d5. And of course, the knight has to take on c3, otherwise you will lose the pawn. So pawn takes d5, knight takes c3, pawn takes c3, pawn takes d5. And even though white tried to prove an advantage, with times it was proven that black really keeps complete control of the position. They've tried c4, they've tried other moves. It's really a safe line for black. Even this line is very, very hard to challenge. This game will serve as an example. So rook to c1, c6. Again, you have to pay attention here. You cannot play a move like, let's say, knight bd7, c takes d5, and the pawn on c7 can have some real issues. You can see that, right? Knight d7, c d5. If you take back, you just lose it. If you take the knight, first I'll take with my rook, and the pawn on c7 is embarrassed. So, c6. And now again, you can see analysis. There are many, many variations. Kind of funny, I'm looking at this game because I was preparing one of my students at the World Youth for exactly this kind of variation. And okay, the opening, again, the point is not to teach the opening. The point is to show you the variation, the game. So bishop e2 is very okay. Knight takes c3, again, trading some pieces. Rook takes, d takes c4. Again, the main idea here, this is the point. Bishop takes, knight d7. Okay, of course, if rook takes, again, it's very, very similar. Bishop takes, knight d7, castles. And now he played the move b6. e5 was the old move to try to get, again, of course, just to say two words about this position, the problem child is bishop c8. The question is, how are we going to get this guy into play? Right now it has no moves, it's blocked by the knight. Also, you have to be a little smart about where you put this knight. So one of the moves that was tried was e5 to release the pressure, and of course white is not going to take, he's just going to sit and wait. And again, white enjoys a slight advantage in space and better development, at least for now. More pieces are out, the rook is already active and this bishop is sleepy, while this one is out. So now we try b6. Again, a new idea, or relative then it was a new idea. Bishop to d3, immediately taking the pawn on c6. c5, striking at the center, very, very important. Bishop e4. Again, because in this position, what black really wants to do is to play bishop b7 and have a really nice bishop on the long diagonal. So from being a really bad bishop, all of a sudden you put it on the long diagonal and it becomes much better than this bishop. So bishop e4, trying to disrupt that plan. Rook b8. And now, queen a4, and again, a very interesting move, but queen c2, again, a theoretical position. And this was the line that Topalov was expecting, I guess, or prepared for. And in this position, Anand came with a really nice idea. This is where the game really begins and leaves a real impression. And when you first look at it, you think, wow, this is a move that maybe a computer can come up with, but a human looks like he's going to look at it for a second and just say no. And he plays knight f6. Fantastic. This is just a really great move. Now what to do? The knight is attacking the bishop. Obviously, I'm dying to take this bishop and play bishop e7. If I get to some position where I get to just take this bishop, queen takes, bishop e7 on the long diagonal, not to mention that I can even take this pawn and isolate your pawn, well, of course, black is going to be just much better. So, what to do? He took on c5. Another option was to save the bishop going this way, but now, of course, by doing that, of course, now the c6 square is occupied by a bishop, so I can easily save my pawn by taking. Knight takes. Of course, a second ago, I wouldn't even dream of doing it with the bishop back on f3, because the knight c6 would just ruin me. But now the bishop is occupying that square, so I can do it. And now, e5. And you can see that black is looking in the position and claiming to have absolutely no problem whatsoever. The knight doesn't have c6 like he was hoping for. So he has to go somewhere, then the bishop can just come out. And black has solved all his opening problems. Again, not to win, but at that level, you just want to survive. You just want to not be worse. And here he achieved it. So in our game, he is basically picking up the gauntlet by taking on c5. He's saying, okay, show me. So, of course, knight takes c6, knight takes e4, queen takes, pawn takes c5. So obviously, a deal was made. One side gave up his very good bishop, white. In return, he charged a complete mess up of the black pawn structure. And this is, again, the question that probably wasn't well answered before this game, because it looked like, well, I can easily overcome one bishop when this pawn is going to be a problem forever. I can easily defend my stuff. But as this game will show, black's activity completely outweighs the pawn structure compromise. And let's see how it's done. Okay, let's see some variations. First of b3, bishop b7, and now again, well, there's a million moves. I'm not going to show you all of them because we only have 40 minutes and not 10 hours. But like queen f4, bishop f3, takes, rook d8, again, great activity. The rook is coming to d2, rook here, rook d2. And you can tell that the black activity, he just says, you know, do whatever you want with the c pawn. I have the d file, threatening rook d1. I'm also interested in the pawn on a2 in some variations. So after g3, you know, again, black has definitely more than enough come for the weakness of the structure. So in the game, Topalov was trying something else after takes, and he played queen c2. Okay. He's directly saying, okay, I'm defending the pawn on b2, and I'm looking very hungrily at your pawn on c5. Bishop b7. Completely ignoring the pawn correctly, because obviously after taking the pawn, taking the knight, the king side is ruined, and now the pawn comes back with interest after rook b2. And if you don't take, I'm just going to take more pawns, and otherwise if you take, I take on c5. And when you look at the two positions, only black can be happy because his pawn structure is just intact and the white one is not. So in our game, he played knight d2. Also another variation that is mentioned is if e4, f5. Again, very aggressive, anything and everything to open up that bishop. So, yeah. So in the game, he went knight d2. And again, this is probably the position that Topalov had in his mind, thinking, okay, the bishop is very nice, but I'm moving my knight. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep you super busy with that c-pawn. So now, rook d8. Again, a free developing move based on the tactic that rook c5, rook d2, again, doesn't quite work out. And Topalov is probably starting to appreciate that, again, positionally speaking, yeah, the pawn is weak, and yes, white is all over it. But as we know well in chess, sometimes the positional stuff is being marred by tactics. And here, the black tactics, just one move after another, make sure that the pawn structure doesn't have any significance, or at least not overwhelming significance. So, pawn to f3, trying to pacify that bishop a little bit. Sooner or later he has to make that move, because you cannot let that bishop, every move you have to think of what happens on g2, right? All of a sudden there's going to be a queen takes g5, or a bishop takes g2. You can calculate every move, what if that happens. So, f3, very logical. Bishop a6. Very, very concrete, attacking the rook. And again, he has several choices. If he would have just played rook c1, playing Alekhin's gun opposite the pawn, then queen d7, immediately looking at the pawn, and the knight, and when the knight moves, simply c4. Okay, also bishop d3 is equal, mentioned as equal, if he wants to just do that. But c4, and nothing to worry about. Okay, so again, completely equal position according to the computer. So he played rook f2, and I have to tell you that all those combinations of moves make the white position a little bit suspicious. He is really pushing hard, and somehow he's slowly drifting into a worse position. But for now, he is not in danger yet. Now, another idea was to play rook d5 first, luring e4, and then playing rook d7. But okay, he decided to play rook d7 at once. Again, the question is, should the pawn be on e3 or on e4? Let's keep this in mind for the advance of the game. And now, g3, okay, rook d8, king g2. And now, again, notice that in this position, Vichy, typically to Vichy, he is not making any committal moves. He doesn't want to play e5, he doesn't want to play h5, he doesn't want to create anything. He just holds the position, maintains it, and let Topalov, he kind of challenges Topalov to say, okay, you have white, our last game in the match, are you going to push for it or not? And so he plays just bishop to d3. Very, very nice. So, now again, some lines are given by Geary. He mentions queen a4. Bishop e5 could just be an equal line, just attacking the queen, and if takes, rook takes d2. Okay, another way to play queen g5, hitting everything. And here knight e4 would be equal after bishop takes, for example. But if you try to play for more with this, then after queen e3, wow, this position is really becoming a little suspicious because queen e1 is coming. And this is just one example of how you don't want to do. Definitely this is, you got a pawn, yeah, but man, did you sell your soul to the devil here for that? That's really a very, very bad idea. So, just one example of many. So in the game, he decided to play quietly, queen c1. In Topalov's defense, we consider that he's being very cautious for now, but watch what happened. The bishop goes back to a6, rook a3, bishop back to b7, tactical defense of the pawn on a7, because the bishop f3 check. And in this position, again, e4, f5, as we already know, so knight b3, and rook c7. Okay, one defensive move, he's defending the pawn. Knight a5, bishop a8. Of course, black has no intention whatsoever of trading his knight for the bishop, his bishop for the knight. And now, again, many variations are mentioned, like e4, g5, with the idea of playing g4. And if rook c3, then g6. Excuse me, again, g5 with the idea of g4, again, it's the same idea. So he plays knight c4, and black plays e5. Geary mentions that even g5 was possible, but e5 is the most concrete move, wanting to play e4 at the right time. Now, in this position, you can see that Topalov completely lost his head. he manages to play several really bad moves and got into real trouble. E4, okay, that's still normal. That's not in itself not a mistake. F5, okay, but now he needed to really pacify the situation. He needed to play knight d2. The best move was to play knight d2. Then after takes, and then we have two choices, either rook d4 immediately or takes, rook d4. This is of course equal. Both sides have an ugly pawn structure and a not so safe king, and in the major piece ending, you could already see how this is going to peter out either to a drawn rook ending or to some perpetual check. That would be very normal and probably a fair result. Vishy could go home very happy that his novelty got him a draw with no effort against a very scary player. However, Topalov is still not really believing it and not really willing to concede that he can just give a draw with white like that, and he plays this move. This is like, the reason I chose this game, by the way, if you want to know, is that in the World Cup, he had this game where in time pressure he played the move f takes g6. I don't know if you guys saw it. He was black, white had a pawn on g6, he played f takes g6, and he got mated in just a few moves, just a reflexive move. Where if he would have played f5, he would have really almost no trouble in the king side. His seventh ring was defended. And this is also kind of a similar idea. He just simply decides to take a pawn, almost like with some oblivion, just not really appreciating what was going on. And of course, Vishy didn't need a second invitation. e4 is coming. And man, if you look at the two positions, you're starting to realize that the white king, not exactly where he wants to be. And look at this bishop on a8. It's like, from a distance, he's sending a nice telegram, trouble is brewing, is coming. Now he needs to be super careful, but he makes another hasty move, and after that the game is just over, and Vishy finishes in classical style. He plays this, suicide, just suicide. Who plays a move like this? It's unreal. Instead, of course, he should have played something like here, 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 where again, the pawn on f3 along with the bishop behind it, you can tell, I know who I want to be in this position. It's not very difficult. But again, the burden of proof is, can that thing move? Can you really advance your position? Your queen is under attack. You still have to do something. So queen g5. Yeah, black is better. Probably is going to regain his pawn. But I'm not moving my knight. I can play b3. I'm not moving my rook from f2. And good luck to you coming and mating me. Still a big task, in my opinion. But of course, black is the one who's playing for two results, draw and win. However, after this, he's just playing for one result. After queen takes here, and this is just, look, just optically speaking, it's really embarrassing. I mean, Topalov comes here every year, and of course I know him, and sometimes you want to ask about this game, but it's a bit embarrassing because this is not his shining moment. But it's like, what were you thinking about when you took on f5 and then on e4, especially on e4?
Do you think it was one of those things where he had calculated out something that he thought was correct? But like, if you just take a look back at it, it just visually looks like you're lost.
Maybe. To me, it seemed like he was just unwilling to say that he has given a draw so easily in the decisive game of the match. And he said, okay, show me. But he got shown, and it's like, it doesn't look like it's that hard to be shown here. So after this, rook d4. Well, queen g4 checkmate looks very, very nice here. So, knight here, queen e8. I'm guessing that maybe this is the move that he missed. This is a monster move. Just when you think the queen is in the center and you think, where can I go? I cannot do anything on the diagonal and I cannot do anything laterally, but he just goes back. And now I'm positive that Topalov understood that this game is going south and fast. Queen h5 mate is threatened, and there is no more hope. He played g4 to stop queen h4. So h5, very, very powerful. The white king, again, if I could play this, I'm actually in very good shape. However, not really allowed. So king h4. And again, Vishy plays the most flashy continuation. Yeah, of course, not h takes g, knight takes g4, and all of a sudden white is like all over. But queen d8 check and f6, hg4 was good. Just very simple. But he decides to play here. And again, the white king is just not having a good day. After takes, queen takes, threatening rook g4 mate. So queen f1, rook g4, king h3. And okay, now you say, very nice. My rook on g4 is great. My queen on g6 is great. My bishop on a8 is very great. And my rook on c7 is a bit of a pensioner, right? It's kind of a retired. So bring it into the game, plays the best move. He could have played king h7, not to have to calculate all those checks and funny stuff, but why bother? Rook e7, check here, and knight f5 check. Needless to say that if he takes the bishop, that dear bishop that we talked about, then Vichy would have not missed takes, check, and mate. That would have been probably very, very fun, but well, at that level, it's not really going to happen. So he played knight f5 check, king h7. Needless to say, you cannot take the rook on f8. That's knight takes e7 check, and the rook is coming to the game, and just no, not going to happen. Rook to g3. Rook takes. You got to take with the pawn, otherwise queen g4 is mate. So check, and here. Winning the queen. And normally you have some chances, but here you have no chances. Here. Now, some people said in this position, I remember on the internet, and Giri also mentions it, some people were sure that white has a draw here. However, no. After check, check, takes, pawn takes, very strong. King takes here, here. Of course, black is just winning the pawn ending. So even though he gives up the material, his king is just penetrating, and this is an easy win. So no draw. Of course, Vichy doesn't miss things like that. So king takes g2, queen here, c4. Yeah, the rest is kind of out of inertia. Okay, many wins, obviously. Yeah. And in this position, the knight is gone, right? Or the rook could be gone. In an event, just a lost position. So Topalov resigned. So again, if you go over this game in your database, when you have more time and you really look and you add the computer, you will really, really appreciate how perfectly Vichy played this game. Really a masterpiece with black. Home preparation, a novelty, get an equal game. His opponent is trying to do something, to make something out of the game. You still play every move is accurate. You combine caution with grabbing opportunities. And when your opponent goes crazy with e takes f5 and f takes e4, then he proves that the bishop is just too strong for the knight, and game over. Okay, so this is our first game. Our second game is even more wild, in my opinion. Probably one of the wildest game in modern World Championship. And this is a game, also I think it was the last game of the match between Kramnik and Leko in Switzerland in 2008, was it? Oh, 2004, sorry, 2004, in Brissago, I think. So, again, this is a game that I'm going to do a lot of injustice to, because again, my time is limited. I can tell you that this is a game that if you haven't seen it before, if you haven't analyzed it carefully before, I very, very strongly recommend for you to do it at home with a computer when you have a lot of time. Because the possibilities behind the scenes that we are not really going to be able to touch, and this goes also to the YouTube viewers, are just a pleasure. This is it's like much of it is home preparation. You cannot go over all the variations in a short time. But again, it shows you how prepared Peter Leko was as a player. And he was really, till this day, is one of the best theoreticians ever. If he ever decides to become a chess coach and decides that he wants to help someone, even at the very top, somebody's going to gain a world of benefit from it. Also a true gentleman, by the way, and a real professional. So, Kramnik doesn't often play an e4, e5 opening, but he prepared for this game specifically because he knows that Peter always plays the Marshall Gambit, the Marshall attack in the Spanish, in the Roy Lopez, and he decided to say, okay, dude, show me what you got. I'm going to take your pawn, and good luck to you trying to prove that you can kill me. Definitely lots of computer work here, lots of seconds work involved, and many hours. So, we go right into the tabia. Okay, so I don't know how many of you know this position, but this is a very well-known position in the Roy Lopez. Black gives up a pawn in idea of Frank Marshall, although Marshall didn't have the idea of c6, he had an idea of knight f6. A little bit different, but theory has evolved with the years. but the theme still remains the same. You give up the center pawn, and you get tons of activity. I can tell you that at the level of, let's say, below 2200, and especially in scholastic chess, if I see a match between two guys who are exactly the same rating, who have played, let's say, 1,000,000 times and have an even score, I will always take black, always. And anybody that disagrees with me, I have money ready to prove it. Honestly, because this is just, you've got to be crazy at the club player level to play like this with white. No chances whatsoever. The attack is so hard to repulse that even if you know 20 moves of theory, on move 21 you might just stumble. And it could be on move 25 or 30. Watch where Kramnik goes wrong here. So, G3, kind of a must. I can tell you already that at the scholastic level, even one of my students who's a 1900, the first time she played this, and the last, by the way, because she will never go into the marshal ever, she will play A4 or D3 when somebody castles. She already knows that she's programmed. Okay? She played H3 here, and after bishop takes H3, there were lots of tears, and yeah. So exactly, this is just like, you don't want to do that. And, well, what can I say? Here, rook E4. Yeah, there are several moves that are known in this position. Queen F3, bishop E3, knight D2, all those moves where white is trying to arrange some defense, and it's still, in practical terms, it's very, very hard. Maybe if you're a grandmaster and you analyze 30 move deep, you'll find some draw somewhere, but at the scholastic level, they're not going to remember it, they're not going to do it, forget it. And you're not playing a computer. So rook E4, okay? The idea is very obvious. I want to play at some point like rook H4 and just shift everything. So black has to play G5. Again, I'm not telling you this is your conventional chess. This is definitely crazy chess, but it's really exciting. This is really fun chess. Of course, bishop takes G5 is out of the question because after queen A5, there's a simple fork, and it's going to be awfully hard to defend both guys. So you cannot take it. And he plays queen F1. Queen H5, no way black is going to trade queens when he's down a pawn with an ugly pawn structure. Knight D2. And please don't ask me the question what the theory is 10 years later, because kill me if I know. I mean, this is just impossible to follow. But again, what I'm showing you this game for is just the beauty of the preparation, and also the beautiful ideas that this preparation is. So bishop F5. F3. Again, it's very well known that material has different value in this position. Here, white is up a pawn, and black already has his pawn on G5. The pawn, if the pawn can go back to G7, that'll be a different story. So, of course, when you take here and I take, all the attack is repulsed. I have two agile bishops. My pieces are going to spring out. I'm going to kick your pieces back. And needless to say that's going to be really great. Imagine something like bishop takes, pawn takes, E5, and then knight E4 and all that stuff. So, yeah, they give it a question mark, period. So knight F6, the knight is nagging the rook. And of course, yeah, they mentioned A4 is a possibility, still leaving the rook. You can even take with the knight. But he decided to go back. Again, this is all preparation. Rook E8, you got to take, and he played A4, sorry. Yeah, they mentioned bishop D1, queen G6, bishop E2 as trying to regroup and like playing some sort of a hedgehog. When I say hedgehog, I mean just like the animal is trying to get into himself. But he played A4, preparation still. Queen G6. Okay, the attack of the H-pawn and the light squares here is done. And now it's time to use the free file, the open file, and white's Lasker development. Of course, we want to play bishop D3, followed by something to E2. And things are becoming very critical. I think already this position is very suspicious for white, but again, I guess the Kramnik and his seconds and the computer proved that he can play it out, but, well. Okay, now let's see some analysis. This is supposedly the best line. Give back the pawn, and now, bam. Here. Okay, this is supposed to be some sort of a line. I mean, one of those crazy lines that white is supposed to survive, I guess. But again, black has nothing to worry about at all here after bishop D5. So he didn't do that, again, because he's prepared for something else. He took on B5 and bishop D3, queen F2, and that was the mistake. Now the line would have been, well, of course, kind of an anticlimactic to play this, here, here, and with a draw in repetition of moves. So that would have been nice, and again, an achievement for black, who proves that there's no advantage for white in the variation, and therefore he can collect a half a point with black and then push with white. That's exactly the strategy in matches. But again, Kramnik prepared something, and it looked really good, by the way. Rook e2, and of course, takes, takes, takes. So this is the variation, and I think somewhere around here, I'm not sure, I honestly don't remember kind of my mafa because I didn't prepare it, but I'm not sure if Kramnik expected the next move or not, or it came as a complete surprise for him, but somewhere around here, Leko's preparation is starting to show superiority. When you first look at the position, you think to yourself, what is going on? I mean, white just looks really happy here. Looks like black made some mistake. It's like disarray, and the pawn is jumping in, but he played queen d3, 2 exclamation marks. Really, really a fantastic line. King f2 was played, and same idea, bishop takes f3. Again, a very strong idea with very few pieces. So he took knight e4 check, king e1, and now comes another motif, knight takes c3, threatened queen e2 mate. So the knight came from one direction, now he comes from another direction. Just imagine having this on your kitchen table sometimes, just analyzing with your computers, with your seconds, and having something. I mean, we're talking about move 28 or something, and it is like, yeah. So it's very hard to stop the mate if you don't take the knight. So he took the knight, and he took king f2, queen takes a1. So he could have still fought on by playing bishop takes g5, queen takes a6. Well, needless to say that black is in good shape having a queen for 2 pieces. You know, only black is playing to win. But it's not that easy because, you know, 2 bishops and a knight can be somewhat tricky. I think that the human would have just suffered here, but against a computer maybe it's trickier. But in any event, after this he plays a7, and after h6, this was to me kind of a funny moment because he probably thought queen takes a7, something takes g5, like knight takes g5, but he just says, okay, a7 is not going anywhere, so you're not getting g5 anymore. And now, of course, the position is just over. After h4, g4, Kramnik is just realizing that he's going to lose the a7 pawn, and under the circumstances, there's just nothing to play for, and resigned. Just an amazing game. Again, like I said, I'm not doing any justice to this game because we went over it relatively fast. We had some time constraints, and I have one more position I need to show you. But really a game that's really worth going over. It's game number 8 from the Brissago World Championship in 2004, Kramnik Leko. Okay. Can I kill this thing?
Yeah.
Okay, our last example for the day. And again, this is kind of a more well-known because it's more recent. And this is from game 9 of the Anand Carlsen match, in the first one in 2013 in Chennai. And I'm not going to show you the whole game, but just going to show you what we can define as probably one of the most tragic moments in World Championship history. And I'm okay to do it because before I show you Anand's brilliancy, so I can now give him a little hard time. So they played a tame opening that turned out into a very exciting attack. A little bit in the spirit of Botvinnik Capablanca, for those of you who know this game. But of course, also very different. So again, notice that I'm skipping all the analysis because I want to go to that position. And okay, in this position, this is the critical moment. He could have easily drawn with knight e2, okay, but he decides to go for more, rook f4, queen. And this is the critical moment of the game. And you can see this on YouTube, like in like a, not live, but a recording, that he took a little, not that much time to play the move knight f1, and makes one of his worst blunders of his career. He should have played bishop f1 in this position, and after queen d1, rook h4, queen h5, knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes, bishop f5, g6. Completely crazy, I know, but it's normal. Bishop takes here, rook g5, and again, lots of analysis. Knight takes f6, pawn takes f6, queen takes f6, rook d5. As you can see, the game goes on, most likely to a draw. Did they say equal, right? Yeah. And an equal position. And again, many, many fireworks, but at the end, all the material kind of evaporate, just a wholesale of trades. And probably Vichy would have gotten a draw. I mean, most likely would have gotten a draw. Similar to just playing knight e2 on this position, that would have been really easy. Okay, let me go over this variation just for the sake of historical justice. After here, 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 here. And equality is going to be queen f6 is threatened, so why is it a draw though? Because he plays what? Now I'm curious why it was supposed to be a draw, but say again? 98, maybe 98. Oh, you can't do that because I'm going to mate you. Yeah. So here I have to what? Push my h pawn, I'm guessing, right? I'm not sure. But it doesn't matter. I mean, this is not the point. The point is not to show you this. The point is to show you what happened in this variation after here. Rook f4 here. He played knight f1. Again, it seems the same, right? It looks like, what is the difference between this and this? He played knight f1, and now he completely missed queen e1. He was probably expecting, again, queen d1, after which he will just play here, 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 knight here, and just wins. Knight f5 is coming and is just killing him. But that would have won the game. However, what he did not see that after queen e1, it's all over. Because now, of course, after rook h4, queen takes h4, there's just nothing to look at anymore. He's just down a rook with no attack and nothing. So after some contemplation and lots of sad faces, he had to resign. And yeah, very decisive game in the match too, so terrible. All right, guys, I think this concludes our lecture for today. Hope you enjoyed it.